Alright guys, you're going to have to deal with a little bit of roughness in this video because it's pretty hard to show these big things like this big. So bear with me, but this is how to maintain and clean your airbrush. So we have a second camera right here, and this is what the airbrush does look like. Typically there's 2 of these in every system, not because you need 2, you only need 1. But because if you didn't clean out your airbrush, or if the person before you didn't clean out your airbrush, you're going to have real problems. So this one's brand new. I'm going to open it up right now. And because it's brand new, and this kit is going to somebody for an event actually in a few days, I'm not actually going to put any paint in it. I'm just going to show you how to clean it. There's a whole other video that shows you how to use them. So this is what your little kit will come with. It'll come with first your actual airbrush gun. Second, don't worry about this attachment. It's like a different spray attachment. And third, this tiny, tiny wrench. It's a very, very tiny wrench. Like if you can see that, like next to my nails, you'll see how freaking tiny that wrench is. So what we have is we have a couple of different parts with this airbrush gun, all right? Everything is really, really tiny. I mean, look at how tiny this nozzle is just compared to my nail, right? And I have tiny baby nails. Every little part in here is really tiny. The majority of problems you're gonna get with an airbrush when you're doing airbrush tattoos are just because this isn't clean. Airbrush tattoos are literally the easiest job in the world. I could have a toddler doing them. But the reason you guys get paid $30 an hour literally to just put on stickers and spray is because you have to know how to properly maintain the airbrush. Because literally, even if there's a couple of molecules out of place somewhere around here, your airbrush just isn't gonna work. So, the first thing I'm gonna do is kind of take it apart and show you how the airbrush actually works. Right up here we have the well. This pops right off. And this is where you actually put all your ink. This right here is where you hook up your hose. I'll show you that later. And what happens is it's dual action, so put that there. When you put the ink in here and the hose in here, the compressor shoots air through here when you press it down. This is dual action, so you press down, shoots air up, and when you pull this little trigger back, so ready, down and back, can't just go back, can't just go down, down and back. The air shoots up here, goes through, there's like a little metal needle here, glides over the needle, pulls ink down from the well, and sprays it out. It's a really, really fine system, but that's basically how it works without getting splattery or gross or anything. So this is where you put your ink, this is where you're going to hook up your hose. So let's look at what the inside of this looks like. Here we have a back. This back is really basically so you can pull the needle out. It's really, really thin needle. All these parts are really, really fine. When you're cleaning an airbrush, always keep a plastic cup around. I don't know how I'm going to do this all in such a small area. Keep a plastic cup around. I don't like taking anything out without putting it directly in that plastic cup, or this is the lid of my airbrush, putting it in the lid. So, oh god, I hope you can all see this okay. So I'm going to take, right now, this little back that I took off the airbrush, and I'm going to put it right in this little lid. Then I'm going to take this top, put it right in the little lid too, okay? Those are like probably the only 2 parts that you don't need to clean. Actually, the last thing you have in the back when you're dismantling this is this little screw. Take this little screw out. You can see this right here, glides right off. I'm going to put that in the lid, okay? So, I'm going to take this camera. Woo! This is what is sitting in my lid. You have the back little screw, the back end piece, and the cap. I just don't want them rolling away, so that's why they're there. Okay, so I have the back of this all taken apart. Ooh. I'm trying to put this back here so you have kind of like a background to see this better, and hopefully it actually helps. So this is the back. Because the air is shooting up here and out here, and using the well, this is the part that's going to get all gunky and that you really need to clean out. The stuff back here doesn't really touch ink except for the needle, which is how we pull it out. But this is the part you really need to clean. These parts are really, really, really tiny. That's what that tiny wrench was for, is pulling out the tiniest parts of here. So what I have to do is I have to unscrew it piece by piece, and that's why I have this plastic cup. I'm going to put pieces directly in that plastic cup, and you'll see just how freaking tiny they are. So First thing I'm going to take off is this little guard. This whole like cone is 2 pieces. I have to be very, very careful while I'm unscrewing these 2 pieces not to bend the tip of the needle. This is a little guard that keeps the needle ink flowing straight right into the cup so I don't lose it. Next we have this cone that kind of stabilizes the whole front end of it. There we go, right into the cup. Now what I have is I have like the world's tiniest, hope you can see that against my pale skin. You have a serious little bit of a needle and this tiny miniature cone and then this like metal tube, right? So this is what my tiny screwdriver is for. I'm actually getting kind of worried that I'm going to bend the needle because if you bend the needle, this whole thing is messed up. If you lose one part, this whole thing's messed up. So now that I have the needle showing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it out backwards. I took off that screw already, so needle. I'm going to put my needle in the cup, ready? The dull back end first, not the thin pointy end first, okay? Dull back end first because I can't bend that thin. So I'll just plop that right in the cup. Alright, so now what I can do is I have this tiny, tiny little cone bit right here, and I am going to use my tiny screwdriver and get rid of it. Alright, here we go. Oops. Like literally, this is so little. I can't even pick it up with my nails. Can you see that even? It's so little. That's the easiest piece to lose. God, do not lose it. Pluck it right in your thing. There we go. Sorry, my jar now. Now this can pretty much stay here. Your trigger is probably going to want to fall off at this point. Just kind of shove it back in there. If this trigger falls out, you're going to just kind of hate yourself because getting it back in is kind of a pain in the ass. So try to keep it in there so it's like at a down position. Alright, this part right now, the last thing I'm going to do is, there's some leftover ink in here, but I can't actually take this apart anymore. So the last I'm going to do is in my little cup, I'm going to put this face down in there. So what I have in my little cup, which you cannot see because it's also tiny, is I have that tiny screw, that tiny, tiny little guy, the 2 parts of my front cone, my needle, which is dull side down, not the pointy side down so I don't screw it up, and then my actual gun. All of the paints we use are temporary tattoo stuff, so they're waterproof, but they're not alcohol proof. So this is my, what is this? 91% isopropyl alcohol. Don't use anything under 91%. You can use 95 or 99% if you can find it. I like it a little bit better, but this is what I found at Walmart. So I'm going to fill this whole thing up until I filled it up to the tip of the well. I'm going to submerge my airbrush entirely up to the tip of the well because I want it to soak. Now, this is actually a brand new airbrush, like I said, so for the most part, there's literally nothing in here. There's nothing in here. But if you didn't do a good job of cleaning your airbrush after your event, once it soaks for a little bit, you're going to want to go in with paper towels and start physically cleaning out the center of it because just soaking it in alcohol will only get the top layers of gunk, not like the built up layers of gunk. So let's say you have a gig tomorrow, the next day, something like that, and you need to clean this whole thing out, right? Always, always, always clean it out after your gigs and again the day or 2 before you get to your gig, because this is really where all problems end up, is that you have like a weird stray molecule somewhere and then your whole, and I literally mean molecules, I don't mean like layer or gunk or chunk, I mean freaking like some atomic molecules. That's how picky these systems are, and that's why I'm doing this video. Like you've seen, I don't have any videos on like maintaining your balloon kit because that's more or less fine. You pop some balloons, pop some balloons. If this has a couple of atoms out of place, like it's done. I'm not exaggerating. So clean it right after your gig, a couple days before your gig, and then this is my right before my gig cleaning. So what I'm gonna do is while everything else is soaking, I'm gonna push this to the side. And I'm going to clean out my needle. My needle, we're just going to get rid of this box. My needle is nice and long. Usually what you'll find is like this is the sharp part. And you'll find usually around here you have some blackness. So I'll just kind of clean that off with this paper towel until there's literally nothing left on it, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this needle back into my box. Because I have this other box right here of little bits that I don't want to lose. It's just the top of the airbrush. So airbrush box. That way you don't lose anything. So while all these little parts are still soaking, I'm going to take this big boy out. I'm going to kind of take my paper towel and kind of twist it up like a cone. So something like this. And I'm going to take it into the well, and I'm just going to shove it around the well. What you'll normally see, if this is really well cleaned out, obviously because it's new, so you would normally see a little bit of blackness right there. Then I'll take another side, twist that around, shove it back in there. And I'm going to do this until literally not a single piece of black is out. Like I said, molecules, guys, molecules. I can't see any black. I need this to be like as white as it was if it's new. What that does is that cleans out the inside of the well. It doesn't even necessarily clean out like this part. It just cleans out this part. So while everything else is still soaking in that alcohol, I'm going to then take my needle, and I'm going to feed my needle very gently, because remember you can't bend it, all the way through, and then pull it back out. What this is going to do is this is going to show me if there's any more buildup right here. If any black comes out on that needle, I'm going to wipe off my needle like I did the first time, and then take this guy, put him right the fuck back in here. Put my needle back in the lid of the box, again, because I cannot lose any parts of this. So, this is all going to soak. And what you can do is you can just kind of take alternative time bits, but you can alternate taking out the actual airbrush and cleaning that out like I just showed you. You can take the other part that's going to get kind of gunky kind of fast is that front cone part. The best way to do that is sort of the same thing. You're going to make those little rolled up bits of paper towel and kind of just try to shove them in there and clean that out. Because the alcohol will help break down the top layers, but you actually still have to physically kick them apart. What I highly, highly, highly recommend doing is once you think everything is totally cleaned out, once you think you're totally solid, keep it soaking for 24 hours. Because these parts are really small, make sure they're out of reach of any cats, dogs, children, significant others who just think they're supposed to get rid of your glass of water and don't see the tiny parts in it. I highly recommend soaking everything for 24 hours because even if, like, dude, molecules, guys, molecules. Even if you think you got it all out, it's probably not all out. So, leave it overnight, wake up the next day, you know, my gig's in the afternoon, wake up at 10 in the morning, make sure it's all good. So, what I'm going to do now, it's the next day, I have my gig, so I'm going to put it all back together. So I'm going to pull out first my airbrush. I'm going to pull out one piece at a time, because if I don't, I'm going to lose something. Now getting these little pieces out of here, this is why it's helpful to do it with a clear glass, is because getting these little pieces out of here is a real pain in the ass. And I have nails and it's still hard. If you don't have nails, it's going to be even harder. So I'm going to start with that, like, tiny little cone bit that I don't even think you can see in here. Whatever. Start with the tiny little cone bit. The bit that you need your tiny wrench for. But I can more or less screw it on with my fingers. So I'm going to try that first. Alright, I'm going to have to do this closer to me. Sorry, guys. You'll see when you have the airbrush in that you can probably do this with your fingers.
3 weeks later.
Good news. That is finally in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bigger cone out of my plastic thing. Take my bigger cone. Push that over on top. Then I'll finally take my last cone, my littlest guy, which kind of guides the airbrush. It's all upside down, but screw that on. The last thing I'm going to do is take my needle and push it through. Gently push it all the way through until I can see its very tip coming out. Now if you really want to test if this is clean, pull the needle back out and see if there's any black on it. If there's any black on it, you're probably going to be in trouble when you get to the party, but gently push it in, make sure a bit is showing. Cool. So, last, take my little screw, put my screw on here. You don't have to screw it on that tightly, just enough to keep the needle in place. And then you take your butt, put the butt on. there you go. And then the last thing is once you put the ink in, just cap that inkwell. And that's how you take apart and service and clean an airbrush.